First, let me just tell you about something that happened the other day at BYU. We use a little piece of software called Turnitin to see if we can identify any plagiarism that occurs in people's papers. Have anybody used Turnitin? Yeah, use it here a lot. So one professor found that one student's paper was 80% copied from Wikipedia. So he called this student in and he said, we've gone over this and I've looked at the Wikipedia. He said, it's 80% of your paper is from Wikipedia. He said, well, he said, if you look at the credit line in Wikipedia, I wrote the Wikipedia article. So this shows there's kind of a new day with the internet, with things like the Wikipedia. It made me think, too, about when you look at assessment, Turnitin is just basically a piece of assessment in a sense. You want to find out if it's original work. And you say, think about a student who's trying to pull the wool over your eyes as a professor. It's like, this student's not interested in learning, obviously. Think of yourself saying, if I really want to learn something, I'm certainly not going to plagiarize. I'm not going to try and fool somebody that I really know it. I'm going to want to be able to perform this. So it's interesting that when we have these artificial situations that we create in academe, that we sometimes actually promote these other kinds of behaviors that we really don't want, like plagiarism. So assessment is kind of at the heart of all this. I saw this on the internet the other day. I'm trying to learn Portuguese. What do you think about that? I saw that, wow, we can learn another language in just a couple of minutes. Isn't this great? So I think when you get into this site, then they would like you to pay them $10 to $15 a month. So that's not just a couple of minutes, obviously. It takes a little bit longer than that. But it's all about assessment. Could I tell? Could I give you 2 minutes and see if you could learn Portuguese in 2 minutes? I think so, and I think we could discover that maybe you could learn how to spell the word Portuguese, which isn't that easy to spell, but probably not too much more than that. So I want you to think of one of your most recent learning experiences. Mine is Portuguese. I'm right now trying to learn some Portuguese, but I want you to think of your learning experience. So you as a learner, what's something that you have been recently trying to improve on, to learn? Just think about that for a minute. Talk with the person next to you as you continue to munch. Well, it sounds like you're learning a lot. Yeah, that's great. Now, I would like to know a little bit more about what you were trying to learn. So how many of you selected a learning experience that is happening in a formal educational setting like a school or university? Let me see by show of hands. Okay. How many chose something more personal outside of a formal setting? That's kind of what I thought. I've never done this before, actually, in an audience like this. Never asked for this before, but that's a little bit what I thought. Sometimes when I mention learning experience, people immediately think of school, formal setting, classroom, this kind of thing. But actually, as we go on in life, of course, we are not usually in the formal setting very much, learning things on a day-to-day basis, as students are in college or in K-12. So part of what I'm saying today is, how can we use assessment to help prepare people for the lifelong kind of learning that we all go through, where most of us choose these kind of personal. Okay, those of you who chose formal settings, what kinds of experiences did you mention? Okay, those of you who chose a formal classroom, be brave. Yes?
I'm working on my dissertation. I'm learning about the statistical analysis I need to do the analysis for my dissertation.
Okay, you're learning about the statistical analysis you need to do for your dissertation. Is this kind of important to you?
Yeah.
Yes. How much do you want to pass that oral when you... Yeah.
I want to keep my job, so yes.
You want to keep your job. There is motivation here, very good motivation. Okay, so this is kind of a skill-oriented thing, really. It's a skill to be able to use statistics to analyze data so that you can get the right results, defensible results, so that you can present them in a defensible way. Okay, somebody else in a formal setting. Let's just hear. Hey, you raised your hand. Yeah.
Designing
DE course.
You're designing a distance education course. Never done it before, so this is the first time kind of a thing. And what's it in? What? Biology. And do you have a background in biology, or? Yeah, okay. Well, we might chuckle, but sometimes instructional designers design courses in biology and they don't have any background in biology. They work with a biologist, so sometimes you're the biologist. You're the subject matter expert designing a course, a distance learning course. Okay, never done it before. So you have all kinds of questions that are coming up and say, how should I do this with students? How much interaction should I get? How much feedback should I give them? How am I going to do all this at a distance because you don't have them face-to-face? Okay, that's good. How about those of you who chose from the informal, we might say, setting, or the personal setting? Yes, Ben?
I'm trying to improve my fly fishing technique.
Yes.
Fish by bouncing the weight along the bottom of the river. I haven't, and I'm not successful yet.
Fly fishing technique. You know, I've only done that once. It was in England, and this guy I was visiting with said, "Do you want to come fly fishing?" I said, "I really don't know how to fly fish." And he said, "I'll teach you." And so we went out there, and I think I was his most difficult student ever. Mostly the whole time I was tangled up in the line. So this is a skill. So again, kind of a skill with the distance, a skill with the statistics. Yeah, good. This is getting good. I like this. Tell me another one from the informal setting. So yes, Devin.
I've got an interview scheduled on Monday for a film on comparative religion, and so on the way here, I just spent about 3 hours thinking about what I might have to say about the value of studying comparative religions. And just that process of sitting and thinking for 3 hours really solidified some understandings and some learning for myself, I think, that will prove in the end much more valuable than whatever I have to say on film.
Okay. That's very good. So, in a sense, this was a self-taught kind of a thing in a way. It was you were probably looking at things as well. I don't know. Reading things? Yeah.
Yeah, a matter of kind of taking everything and all the experience and whatever, processing it into some kind of a framework that
yeah.
I can record it and
good. And maybe part of that reflection and that kind of thing, reflecting on what you know and what you've learned about this and how you're going to use that. Excellent. Very, very good. All different kinds of things we are trying to learn. And you just mentioned, I think, when I actually give that presentation, I'm going to say some better things than I would have if I hadn't have thought about that. But I thought about some things that I may not even say that are more important to me than anything else. So you are self-assessing. You're looking at your own learning, your own progression, and figuring out what you can do, what you can't do, how it's coming along, right? Yeah. This is good. We're going to come back to that a little bit. Okay. So, yeah, how is our learning assessed? Now, just think now, if even the ones that were in formal settings, how many thought of a learning situation where you took a written test? Okay. So what was yours? Be brave, yes.
Business law.
Business law, you're taking a class right now, and you have a written test. Okay. Who else had a written test that they thought of? Okay. Yeah, and that's because you're currently a student. Yeah. This is why this is so interesting to me. We spend a lot of time on these written tests, as teachers, getting all these written tests right. But throughout most of our life, we don't take them. We really don't. We still have to learn, and we still have to assess whether or not we're gaining mastery. Assessment's very important in every learning situation, because we don't know if we're making any headway unless we have some kind of assessment going on. But the formal written test is not very common. Most of you, even the statistics one, he's going to have a performance test at the oral exam. That's a performance test. And say, we want to see if you can actually defend this thing that you have done. So how many would say you did some kind of, you kind of looked at it, you looked at yours kind of imagining the presentation that you're going to give, imagining this performance that you're going to do on video, right? Okay, how many would say it was some kind of performance test? Let me just see. Okay. Yeah, even with the fly fishing, yeah, seriously. I mean, you can either fly fish or you can't. I know I can't. He can. And the proof of the pudding is, out in the river, how does it work? Yeah. Okay. So one of my messages is, in formal education settings, we need much, much more performance testing, like we are going to have when we get into the real world. And I tell people, I'm tested all the time. I'm tested in front of groups. I have to make presentations in front of vice presidents. Or in the church sometimes I make presentations in front of general authorities. I'm tested all the time, but no written tests. I mean, I'm not saying written tests don't have a place. I'm saying written tests could be quite handy sometimes. Somebody could help me in Portuguese a little bit with my sounds right now with a little written test to see if I'm getting my sounds correct, see if I know the rules for pronunciation, better way to say it. Okay, so did your assessment include a score or a grade? Did your assessment, how many, yours probably did, right? So yours did. Raise your hand. Yours, we won't ask you, we won't make you tell us, unless you want to tell us what grade you. Took it yesterday, you're safe, okay. But nobody else has included a score or a grade. This is interesting. This is why I wanted to try this. I haven't done this before with a group, but we need to think about this because we put a lot of emphasis. Now, why in formal ed do we have scores and grades? Because we have scores so that we can assign grades, right? And so that when someone comes in and says, wait a minute, I think I deserve a higher grade in this course, we can say, well, here's your score and here's the score of somebody else. So no, you don't deserve a higher grade because you didn't do as well as a third of the class did. This is why professors do this. We kind of get hung up on these scores so that we can assign grades. It was actually a graduate student in our program who said, eggs and pork should be graded, people should not. I always liked it. And I was looking recently in a kind of a history of how we've come about with scoring and grading and multiple choice tests and all that. And when grading first came about, it came about actually in schools originally. And then the Food and Drug Administration adopted it as a way of grading meat and eggs. It's very interesting. First we started with people, then we went, now we should maybe go backwards and say, let's keep it with the meat. How many would say your assessment helped you know what you needed to do to improve? Let me see that. The way that you were assessing helped you know what you needed to do to improve. Yeah. How about yours on the formal test? Would you say it helped you know what you needed to do to improve? Like when you get the results back, will it tell you what you need to do to improve?
Yeah, it shows the
okay.
weaker areas.
Okay. So you know what to study more of? Okay. That's good. Sometimes tests we take in the formal setting don't give enough clues about what we need to do to improve. It might tell us where we did poorly. We're not sure how to make it better. So sometimes, for example, you might see someone who scores an English paper and gives that a B minus and just leaves it at B minus. And the student comes back and says, what am I supposed to do to make this an A? He says, well, this paper just wasn't as good as the A paper. Here's the A paper. Here's yours. It's not as good. So this doesn't help the student very much. This happens still in formal ed sometimes. It frustrates students. Students really want to know, what do I need to do to improve, to get better? Okay, how do we assess learning? Let's just throw this around a little bit right now. Just think of all the ways, with somebody sitting next to you, think of all the ways we try to assess learning. Think of that for a minute. I kind of asked a different question than what was up there, but I said, what are all the ways we do to assess learning? But what did you come up with? What are all the ways we use to assess learning?
Observation.
Observation. Who said that? Oh yeah, I'd like to observe. Yes. Observation. Okay. Have the students do a journal. Okay, so they keep an ongoing log of their own learning. And discussions. Okay. Questions. Okay. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, sometimes even a discussion board on a learning management system is kind of a little bit of a log of how people are progressing throughout the course. Okay. What other ways did you come up with? Yes.
I use role plays to perform
Okay.
class with a rubric.
Okay. So you have a rubric out there that says look for these things, and the people who are observing the role play can use that rubric to see if how the role play does in each of those areas. Okay, good. Okay, these are very performance-oriented kinds of things. Observation of performance, role plays. The journal is, this is more kind of a documentation of your own progress in a sense. This is good. Okay, any other things that come to mind? Okay, yes? Research papers and projects. Products, in a sense, right? So a lot of courses now have capstone projects. So we can see if people can put everything all together and actually produce something that they couldn't have produced before they came into the program. Think about this for just a minute. What's actually worth assessing? Because we do lots of things in life that may not be worth assessing, right? I don't want people probably assessing every little thing, or even myself assessing every little thing I do during the day, or every little piece of learning that comes to me. What is most worth? This is not a simple question, actually. This is really not a simple question. So what is worth taking time to measure, to assess? Just talk about that for a minute. This made me think, this is the very early part of my career. I was at the Rochester Institute of Technology, the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. This is a place where deaf college students go and are integrated with hearing students. When they got admitted, when a deaf student was admitted to NTID, that deaf student was assessed for a whole day, about 8 hours of tests. They looked at level of sign language ability, level of oral proficiency in language, level of reading, level of English, math, all kinds of assessments. The idea was that it would help us better place students in classes and programs so that they could succeed. The Institute had been going for about 10 years. When we got there, 2 or 3 of us, we started questioning the value of some of this assessment. And we said, here's what we'll do. We'll go around to all the counselors who counsel students into programs. We'll do a survey of all the faculty, and we'll ask them how often, if ever, they use the data generated from this 8-hour marathon assessment. It was almost zero, right? Nobody was using any of it. It was a waste of time, resource, and certainly the students' psychological well-being. So this is kind of a critical thing, you know. It made me think, too, of we used to give for missionaries entering the MTC when they were going to learn before they were to learn a foreign language, they took this test, language aptitude test. This is years ago. And this was supposed to help decide whether or not they would have the aptitude to learn a language. As it turned out, and they did some little studies on this, it was actually just easier to ask the missionary, how confident do you feel in living in a foreign culture and learning a foreign language? One question. That's what they have now boiled it down to, really. So, and that works pretty well. Now, that doesn't mean that if you say, I feel very confident, you're going to be sent to a foreign mission where you speak a foreign language. A lot of those missionaries are sent to English-speaking missions. But the assessment, the whole effort of assessment was just narrowed down to one simple question. And all of the metrics that were used to, before to look at this level of aptitude or that level of aptitude were just not further used. What did you come up with what's worth assessing? I mean, I would like to hear this myself. What is worth measuring? Yeah.
I think, well, I said the learning outcomes. And so
Uh-huh.
really solid learning outcomes. And
Okay.
target those with your assessments.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's the most important, but to go a little bit deeper, I think that you have to know your students before you decide on what those learning outcomes are. And I lately have been going into class with loose outcomes with my syllabus, and then I meet my students, ask what they expect to learn, what their goals are, and then I reshape the outcomes, and I sometimes reshape my whole course before day 2.
Huh. What do you teach?
I'm a linguist, and I train English language teachers.
Uh-huh.
But I've been experimenting with this power sharing in a class called Teaching in Higher Education.
Great. That's tremendous, actually, because when you started out and said learning outcomes, I thought, yeah, and that depends on how well that learning outcome is conceived, really. You know, how valuable that thing is to begin with. And some learning outcomes we can see in courses don't look terribly valuable, and some really do. But what you're saying goes another step further and says, let's really look at what these students need regarding these outcomes and then tailor the outcomes to their needs. I like that a great deal. Yeah, I really like that. Who else had something? Yes?
Assess the skills that they're going to need to use in their career.
Yeah. I used to walk around campus sometimes and just catch students on the fly and say, could you just talk to me for a few minutes? And I would say to them, and they'd say, yeah. They'd pull their headphones out, and I would say, so how many classes are you taking this semester? They'd say 5, and I'd say, out of those 5, do you have one that's just absolutely off the chart, outstanding, wonderful course where you're just learning? This one kid, he said, yeah, I got one like that. I said, tell me about that course. He said, wow, he said, the teacher comes in, he says, it's like every time, every class, he comes in, he says, I want you to be competent so that when you finish this, you are going to be good in your career. I don't want anybody to leave this course unless they're really competent in what we're teaching here in this course. He said, the motivation just kind of, every time just gets greater and greater for me. I don't want to be a poor professional out there. I want to be good. And so this professor helps me do that. So this is kind of what you're talking about. Okay, good. Yeah.
We have a son who has Asperger's
Yes.
on the autism spectrum. And
Yes.
so I'm looking at this through that lens. How do we assess him?
Yes.
Handwriting is a problem.
Right.
He has test anxiety about using handwriting.
Right.
But the knowledge up here is excellent. So how do we assess that?
Yeah. Yeah. This is and his speech is good. So he can verbalize it. He just can't write it very well. Yeah. Well, yeah, then we do oral. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, in this kind of a case, you have to kind of decide, is it worth continuing to work on the writing? Is that just a modality that's not going to ever be really proficient for him? So yeah, these are decisions we make. But to find out what's up here, you kind of go with what you can get in this case, which is the verbal. Yeah, that's good. I don't know if I responded well to what.
And I guess part of the question is the handwriting with assessment?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, actually, that's a question. That's a question for all of public ed right now, because some places are saying we're not any longer going to teach handwriting because we're just going to use computers, and yeah. So there's quite a movement afoot to just say, let's scrap the whole thing of handwriting. It's not worth teaching or assessing. Yeah. So this is an interesting question that society's actually dealing with right now, because since everyone has a phone in their hand, they can type it out. Yeah. Can you type it out? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's really worth asking that question. Yeah. Is handwriting worth it? Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Okay. So this is kind of what I'd like you to kind of think of. When we are, a lot of what we are assessing oftentimes is facts. I wish we could be aiming this more towards skills, more and more and more. Whatever we're trying to teach, how does what we're teaching, whether it's biology or whatever, how does this fit into a skill? So if in biology you're trying to help them learn how to form hypotheses so that they can test them, so that they can actually ask a scientific question and gather information to see if it works on this question, if that's the skill you'd really like to see them come out with, then we don't want to spend the whole course measuring whether or not they can define, different terms in biology. Okay, but this happens sometimes in our courses. We get very fact-heavy in higher ed particularly, measuring lots of facts and never really helping the students see how that knowledge goes into this skill that they've got to have eventually to be able to do something they couldn't do. Yes?
You're left one thing off there, fact, skill, or mindset.
Great.
I teach entrepreneurship, and the entrepreneurial mindset is really important because it precursor to behavior.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. How's that? Okay. Yeah. Facts, skills, or mindset. You've probably seen this book by Carol Dweck called Mindsets, right? Yeah. Is that the title? I really like what she does in this book because she's really saying we either see things as we have a fixed mindset, or we have this more flexible, fluid mindset. The fixed mindset says, I'm just not good at that, therefore I can't become good. And the flexible mindset says, with enough work, I could become good at that. Yeah. Okay? Thank you. Another couple of books while we're on the way, or readings. This first article is by Erickson. Erickson's done a lot on what is called deliberate practice. He spent most of his career on deliberate practice. And the popular book out there is Talent is Overrated. That was in 2008. But a better view, a shorter view, if you want just a short kind of a thing to look at, an article, The Making of an Expert, in the Harvard Business Review. So his whole question is, how do experts become expert? And in our case today, we're saying, how does assessment play a role in helping an expert become an expert? What helps an expert become better and better and better? Obviously, it needs to be improvement. How do I improve kinds of data? They need to know what they need to do to move to that next level. And talent is overrated. I really like in this book where it says, if you look at these people who become extremely good at doing something, and he's kind of highlighting people that become extreme experts. He said there's one thing in common. This deliberate practice means they're working on the skill that they need to move to the next level of performance. They have identified either themselves or with the help of a mentor exactly what they need to do. So you can apply this to piano, to fly fishing, to biology or whatever. I mean, you can apply it to whatever you're looking at. People who become extreme experts are always working on this skill that is exactly what they need to move to kind of a higher plane of performance. Now, you might say, well, I'm not interested in that because that's for OCD people that just want to, they're always trying to be better at something. But it probably applies to all of us in some way. Not that we're going to become necessarily extreme experts, but that we all want to do whatever we're doing better. Whether it's the statistics for the dissertation, you want to be able to do it better. So that, and not just for the dissertation, right? But after the dissertation, you probably want to be able to use something like that again to do some other study. So you want to keep this kind of skill going. That's what kind of, I love this quote. Experts are always made, not born. So you can look at anywhere out there that you look at this singer and you say, well, that singer was just a born singer. That golfer was just a born golfer. That pianist was just a born pianist. That poet was just a born poet. I like this because in his study of these extreme experts, this is the conclusion he comes to. Does talent play a role? Of course it does. Of course some of us have more of a tendency to be able to sing than we do to be able to fly fish or whatever. I don't know. But what he's saying is when people develop an extreme talent, it is because of work, practice, deliberate practice. And they get better and better and better at it. So now, here are just a couple of examples. We'll do these quick. This is an accounting course at BYU. Talks about how a teacher is using assessment a little bit differently in this course to help students figure out what they need to do to learn more.
There's this phrase floating around out there, flipping the classroom, which can mean just about anything. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and any innovation was called flipping the classroom. But what flipping the classroom means is having the students learn things on their own outside of class before they come, so that when they come to class, they're prepared to do applications. We have a few students who want to be accounting majors. They are eager beavers. A few students have to take this for their major. They don't want to be there. Some just want to dip their toe in accounting. Well, when you have a broad set of students like that, you've got to have some sort of process to bring them together so that you can have them in the same classroom with a similar body of knowledge. For example, we do financial analysis. They learn ratios. They don't need to hear that come out of my mouth. They can learn that on their own. Then they come to class, and I say, all right, now that you know the fundamentals, let's look at Walmart. Let's look at the 3 Chinese state-owned airlines and do a financial analysis of them, and we'll realize that we understand the airline industry in China just as well as a minister of aviation in China would, because we've got these simple tools. If they come to class cold, I'm wasting my time trying to talk about Chinese airlines. We use 3 sorts of technology in Accounting 200 to do that. One is some software made by our professor Norm Nemro here at BYU. Students watch his animated persona up in the top left corner of the screen, and there's a navigation portion of the software, and then there's synchronized PowerPoint slides, basically. I myself also record various little clips that I'll post on Learning Suite that they can watch. And we also give them guided readings in books, a packet that's available online. The students who are struggling, they have the resources. They can watch it again. They can use the technology tool as many times as they need to get up to speed. For that reason, my experience has been students love this. It allows them to put in as much time, more flexible time, outside of class according to their ability. I think that without online assessment, none of this will work. Learning Suite quizzes are a linchpin of this whole thing. I have my students complete probably 3 a week, 2 before they come to various class sessions, and 1 as a follow-up after they come. Now on Thursday, everybody has to come. They are given a seating assignment. You got to come. We're going to apply. One of the questions on the post-class assessment is, did you come? Did you participate in the group discussions? So that's part of the grade, coming and participating. I'm nervous to say this on camera, but students in Accounting 200 are now learning much more advanced material than their compadres learned 10 years ago. They're learning more applications. They're poking up into the next class because of the efficiencies generated by flipping the classroom. They're learning more. Don't tell them that. Here's the radical notion behind the flipped classroom. Students don't have to necessarily hear it out of my mouth to learn it. If I've set up my course appropriately, they can learn it in other ways. And sometimes that takes us down a notch as instructors. We think that the only way they'll learn anything is if I say it. That's not true. In addition, they're not going to always have me there the rest of their lives telling them things, whispering in their ear. It's an important skill to learn how to learn on your own. The flipped classroom makes that a necessity, and I think it builds a lifelong learning skill in students.
Okay, any thoughts on that? Yeah? Okay, okay, that's good.
One of the things
Okay. This is just my little attempt at a summary of what I'm thinking about now with assessment. I'm thinking when we do assessment, it needs to be natural. It needs to be part of the learning itself. So the more we can integrate, so these things overlap, but it needs to be natural, open, and integrated into the learning. When assessment is set out here and the learning task is out here, I talked to my son one time. He went to a class. He said, I sat down in the class, the quiz came, and I thought, well, I must be in the wrong classroom because this is not anything that we've been talking about. And I looked at the room number, I thought, I'm in the right classroom. He said, when I saw that this was the quiz and what we had actually been studying, he said, I decided not to take this course. In other words, there was such a mismatch between what was being tested and what was actually being studied. This still happens in higher ed. We've got a lot of room for growth in this. So it needs to be integrated into it, it needs to be natural, it needs to be open, flexible kind of assessment like we're going to have more of throughout life. The results of it, it needs to lead to a higher level of skill performance. It needs to help us become better at self-evaluation. The better we can become at self-evaluation, the less we need someone at our side telling us what we need to do to improve. This Portuguese tutor that I have right now is the best function that he performs is helping me become a better self-evaluator of my own Portuguese. And without him, I couldn't do that, but eventually I hope to be able to become just better and better at assessing my own abilities in that language. And it always has to lead toward improvement. If it leads toward improvement of learning, now we're in good shape. So, any questions? Anything you have? Yeah?
How do you get students to buy into the idea of the flipped classroom?
Yeah, this is a good question because some students say, I'd just rather have you come and tell me everything and you're making me work too hard. Yeah. Yeah. How do we help students? I think once students start to experience this in the right way, and so maybe as you implement the flipped classroom, you don't kind of do everything all at once, but you do it gradually and help them see. I think actually making the pedagogy explicit for them, the reasons you're doing what you're doing, helps a lot. If students don't understand why it's important for them to participate, to contribute, to do all this stuff before they get to class, then, and if they can understand why coming to class, there's no reason to come to class just to get information, because they can get information elsewhere. Coming to class means collaborative work, and if they can kind of understand that, they'll come along. Yeah, and so those in the accounting course, I think they love this approach, for example. They love it. Yes?
Speaking as a student, I've had courses where they're kind of leaning towards this and they kind of want to implement this, but then we come to class and at the same time they just do all the demonstrations anyway. And so
yes.
Why would I want to be learning on my own when he's just going to go over it in class? And I've done the assignments beforehand. I come to class and they say, okay, we're going to do the assignment in class, and they even change it a little bit. Oh, this is how you're going to show me that you were in class today, is because I have this nuance that I did in class rather than what I said before. So it really has to be organized well so that the students aren't going to say, well, he's not actually trying a flipped classroom, he just wants to look like he's doing it.
Oh, that's really a good point. If students don't see any purpose in it, then they're not going to do it. You'll notice that Case Dice here in this video, he said they take 2 little quizzes before class and then 1 following. So the students get the idea, oh yeah, he really means business because he wants me to master certain stuff before I ever get there. So yeah, when students understand this, then when they get to class and they're actually analyzing the 3 Chinese aviation things, it's different. Okay? Anything else?
As a student of Portuguese, does this work for you, the flipped class concept?
Oh boy, the student of Portuguese, yeah. Of course, you know, it's a tutor, and so I'm a one-on-one, but I basically define, he comes and he sits down and he says, what do you want to study today? And I say, I want to do this. And he says, okay, that's good. Let's do that. And then sometime in the middle of it, I'll say, whoa, I still don't understand these pronouns. And he'll say, okay, let me teach you quickly these pronouns, and you can then get that. So he kind of goes into a little teaching mode at that minute because he sees that I need it. So it's kind of back and forth and back and forth. And with pronunciation, he'll look at me and he'll say, coração. coração. And I'll go coração. And he'll say, almost. He'll say, try again, coração. He'll say, ooh, that's better. You know, so he'll just right there trying to get me to do it right, you know. Yeah, it works really well. Spanish is easier. Spanish is, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. Yes. Okay. Good, yeah.
Reference to that question, it seems like a parallel there is that there's no sense in coming to a class to memorize verb. There's no sense in coming to a class to memorize verb conjugations.
Right.
You come to practice them, to put them in context, actually.
That's right.
But all of that can be done out of class ahead of time.
Exactly. Exactly. So last time I was with him, I said, next time you come, I just want to have conversation like I might have in Brazil. I want to have conversation just totally, and just practice that for a whole hour. That's what I need. That's my skill level that I need to get going better. Okay. Time's up, folks. If you want to have any, if you want to ask anything, feel free to come up after, but thank you very much for your attention.